What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new video and a brand new style of video altogether here on the channel. Today we are actually going to be going over what in my opinion is the top 5 cards in standard, specifically standard best of 1. Now I don't normally do these kind of videos. This is a bit out of my comfort zone, to be honest. I'm actually pretty nervous doing this video, and that's because I have never really felt like I've had the position to give my opinion on things like this, because I feel like there are a lot smarter people out there who are much better at the game than I am. But a lot of people have been coming into my streams lately asking me questions about certain cards, that if I like this, that, or the other, what are my favorite decks to play. So I figured, why not just make a whole new series here on the channel and kick it off with this top 5 best standard cards in my personal opinion. So that's what we're doing. We're going to call this new segment or new series, we're going to probably just call it Swayze Talks Magic. Think of it like a small little podcast here on YouTube. And yeah, I just asked that maybe you guys go a little bit easy on me on my personal opinion stuff, because I know this can be derivative for some people, and everyone's got their different opinions on certain things. But just to make sure that this is like as unique and fair as possible on the cards that I pick. I didn't exactly take, the top 5 cards from, one specific deck that's just crushing it right now, or like 5 of the best removal spells because removal's just overpowered all the time. I decided to categorize how we're doing this today. So the top 5 categories that we're going to be looking at here today are: 1, the best removal card; 2, the best aggro card; then we've got the best ramp; then the best card advantage; and then we've got the versatility category. So those are going to be our 5 categories where I'm going to pick a card from and discuss why I think they are the best for that category. So hope you guys have fun with this. And if you guys didn't know, this is going to be a members only video, and it will come out to the general public, on the channel for everyone to see a week later. So if you guys want to see this video a week sooner than you're seeing it now and you're not a member, consider becoming a member. We're going to be doing hopefully some more videos like this. Like I said, we're going to call it maybe Swayze Talks Magic and do some fun stuff like this in the future. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get into our very first category, which is removal. Now, here is my pick for the number 1 card in the removal category. We chose Sheltered by Ghost. Now, before I give you my reasoning for why I chose all of these cards, I want to give you a reasoning why I chose all of them. So basically, the number 1 thing I'm looking for when I choose any of these cards as a choice for the number 1 card for that category is its ability to be crafted. Now, what I mean by that is I could choose a card like Omniscience, for instance, which is completely busted. Omniscience is one of the most broken cards in all of Standard. We know this, but that card requires you to build a very specific deck around it in order for it to be successful. Now, these cards that I chose, they've got a high craftability rate, because there could be some new people here watching this video today that are new to Magic. And this is really honestly mostly for those types of players who may want to go out and craft some of these cards, right? And I want to make sure you guys choose cards that are versatile for multiple different builds. And I feel like Sheltered by Ghost not only fits that criteria, but it fits my second criteria, which is everything these days is only going to be really good if it does more than one thing. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say Cut Down, for instance, right? I was really close to putting Cut Down in the slot, and I'm like, what am I doing? Because Cut Down right now, yes, is a really good removal spell for best of 1 Magic right now because of aggro being everywhere. You got mono red, you got, Boros, you got enchantments all over the place, right? You even got this new Pixie deck that you're going to want to take out, cheap creatures with. But Cut Down, once it kills something, that's the end of it. Yes, it's 1 mana. Yes, it answers a lot of things. But Sheltered by Ghost does multiple things for you. And what I mean by that is it exiles a creature in a very clean fashion, right? It exiles a creature, which means things like Heartfire Hero are not going to deal damage back to your face after you get it off the battlefield. Now, after you take that creature, your creature now has lifelink. So now you're going to gain life once the opponent, takes damage from that creature after you attack in. After you've just taken their creature, you attack in. Now you're gaining life off of your own creature. I mean, there's just a ton of value packed into this card. And then you might think to yourself, well, this card is an enchantment. So things like Cut Down, yes, you can remove the creature, but that's permanent. If your creature happens to get taken out now by the opponent, they get their creature back. So you've lost that value, which is true. But your creature has built-in Ward 2 now because of the Sheltered by Ghost. And now if you stack 2 of these, you got, Ward 4. So it makes it much more difficult for your opponent to kill your creature, making this card it's insane. The value is wildly insane, and Sheltered by Ghosts is definitely my top pick because it just does so many things. You not only remove their creature, but you now are gaining life for the later game, which could matter big time, especially in an aggro matchup. And what's really cool about this card is it's super versatile because I also had Sunfall, right? Sunfall was a really cool pick for me here in the slot, but I chose not to pick this because it's a bit more narrow. Like, you have to run this a bit more in like control shells. If you're running creatures of your own, it's not something you typically want to do is sweep the board, right? So this is more of a card you're going to run in like Azorius Control with like a Jace finish, or you know, your deck list like Boros tokens, or you know, whatever. This card is specifically for things that you're not running a ton of creatures for, right? So this card, the only criteria is, are you running creatures and is your deck white? Because if it is, meeting both of those criteria, this is a card that needs to go into your deck, period. And that's why I chose Shelter by Ghost. I think it's just a really versatile card, can be used on a lot of places, and does a lot for your value. So that's my number one pick for removal. Next up, we have our top pick for aggro. And this one was tough for me because I am not an aggro player by any means. I actually kind of despise playing mono red and those types of things. I know a lot of people do, or at least say they do, but it is one of the most popular decks you can run on the ladder, and it's for good reason. It's typically pretty cheap to make mono red aggro, you know, Boros aggro right now. And then on top of that, they're effective, man. They're very effective. But I chose Screaming Nemesis, which might come to a surprise for some, but for others, not really. This card, though, has so much it can do and so much versatility to it that it landed in my number one spot here for aggro. And the reason being is the best way I can kind of explain this is by talking about another card, Emberheart Challenger, right? Let's talk about this card for a second. This was actually something that was close to being chosen as well, almost like our Sunfall before. But Emberheart Challenger is a staple in a lot of mono red builds, right? It does a lot. It gets you card advantage. It has haste. It has prowess. This card is a 3-for-1 monster, and it's amazing. And this card almost made it as my number one choice. The only reason it didn't, though, is because with Emberheart Challenger, it has built-in things that you basically have to synergize with, man. It has that Valiant trigger, which can get you card advantage, and it has prowess. So you're gonna typically want to run spells that pump your creatures, specifically ones that want to target the challenger, things like Monstrous Rage. You know, you've got the Rescue. That's why it's built into the Boros deck as a staple, because you're trying to put Sheltered by Ghosts on it. You're trying to really pump this thing up and attach it with some enchantments or some sort of benefits, right? With the Screaming Nemesis, I feel like the versatility is a little bit higher. The ceiling's a bit higher because you can run this thing in mono red shells, just like you could in Emberheart Challenger. But also, this card can do a lot for you. Like, it can shut down life gain, which is kind of a bigger deal than you might think. I was running into an opponent the other day who was running this card, and I was running life gain tactics, so I thought I was in a pretty good position. But they were running it in a very traditional mono red deck that throws burn spells. So something you can do with this card is you can actually, on its way out, let's say I'm trying to take this, you know, steal it with something like a Shelter by Ghost, or if I'm trying to kill it with some sort of go for the throat or whatever, I'm trying to take this off the field. Well, the opponent in response can just throw one of their, you know, play with fires that they were going to throw at your face anyways, and they hit the Screaming Nemesis instead. I don't know why I said play with fire. I meant shock. Sorry, different standard. Hit it with a shock, right? And it can deal that 2 damage to your face anyways, because it was going to before. We were going to throw that shock at our opponent's face anyways, but instead we hit our Nemesis on the way out. Now, we hit our Nemesis with it, which deals that 2 damage to the opponent, and then they can't gain life. Like, that's a big deal. And in my personal opinion, that is why I hate seeing this card. It is so hard to deal with. It's just out of range of cut down. It is truly brutal, and it can be ran in Gruul. I know with Gruul, there's people who run, you know, the fight tactics with it. There's a lot of things you can do with this card, and in my personal opinion, I think makes it a much more versatile choice and a much more craftable card than something like the Emberheart. I know it's mythic, but in my opinion, it's kind of worth it. This card is insane, and for anybody who likes aggro, turn them sideways type stuff, it's just really good. It's got haste. I mean, there's a lot to this card. Not so much on the surface. It's a haste creature that you just don't want the opponent, you know, you want your opponent blocking because it can deal that damage and really shut them down for the rest of the game on some of their tactics. But just a really good card. It's a really good card. I hate it, not a big fan of it, but it's a great card. So that takes my number one spot for aggro. All right, our next category we have here is ramp. And the reason I included ramp in this category, not a lot of people run ramp, and it's not exactly something that's meta right now, ramping or anything like that. There are some ramp decks out there, but I chose the Overlord of the Hauntwoods, and that's why I put it in the ramp category, because this is by definition a ramp card. But again, we're looking for that versatility. We're looking for craftability, and I feel like this card meets all the criteria that I've been discussing before. I feel like with the Overlord of the Hauntwoods, again, it does so much for you. You've got the impending built into this card, which means you can play it early as an enchantment, which is really hard to engage and deal with, but it gives you mana right away. Now, let's say this thing came in and it said, search your library for a basic land card and place it on the battlefield, and it still had its impending cost. It wouldn't be nearly as good as it is, in my opinion, because the token that it generates out of thin air, by the way, it's not mana you got to go pull from your deck. This is mana generated out of thin air. It creates a token called an everywhere token, which is every single color. Now, that is what makes this card so special and so busted, is that A, it's a token. So I don't know if you guys seen the other day, we were copying tokens in our deck with some of our stuff that we were doing, like Caretaker's Talent. Caretaker's Talent can copy the land token, ramping you even further in the game for 1 mana, and you're drawing cards off these tokens that you're generating. So there's a lot of versatility when it comes to the type of mana that you're getting. And on top of that, it's every single color, which means this card fits extremely well in domain type builds, specifically leyline binding decks, because it activates that domain immediately as the token hits the field, because you got all 5 colors, making your leyline binding cost only 1 mana to get out onto the battlefield, which is huge. I mean, you don't have to go and search your deck for every basic land type. You got 1 token, you're done. It meets all the criteria. And everybody these days in the current standard meta has been running Zur a lot more, which is funny because as soon as we got the Overlords, the first video we ever made here on the channel was a Zur build. If you guys are unfamiliar with Zur, it animates all your enchantments for 2 mana, gives them lifelink. They attack in with those enchantments. And Overlords are completely busted with that tactic, because Zur can animate it for 2 mana from the impending position as its actual creature form and attacking in right away. And these all have attack triggers built into them as well. Hauntwoods is going to generate that mana every single time it enters the battlefield or attacks, so making it that much more dangerous. And then on top of all of that, it's got the impending 4, which means for 3 mana, you're typically going to ramp in that spot anyways for 1 additional land in a lot of cases. But for this particular situation, you're leaving behind something that on turn or 4 turns away is going to become a 6/5 body that continues to ramp. So the opponent has to deal with it. This is not a card. Any of the Overlords in general are not cards that you can just leave laying on the battlefield. They're going to come in and they're going to hurt you in some big way later in the game, which makes it a multiple for 1 type of effect, like we've been talking about. We want cards that don't just do one thing and then they're out. It's something that does repeatable damage. It does repeatable value. And this card is that card. It does so much for you. And I think out of all the Overlords, this one just had the most versatility and the most usage in every style of build, which is why we chose it as our next top card for this category. So that does it for that category. On to the next. All right, up next, we have a fun one. We are actually doing card advantage. Now, card advantage might surprise you because we've got a 2-for-1 special on this one. I couldn't decide between 2 card advantage pieces here. We've got Caretaker's Talent and the Annex. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to give the edge and I'm going to take a stance here and I'm going to say Caretaker's Talent for the win. But I wanted to leave the Annex in here anyways because I want to talk about it. So these 2 cards right here are going to win my category for card advantage because, yes, there are other card advantage cards like Beanstalk, for example, that do very similar things. But these 2, in my opinion, are the best because, for one, the Annex doesn't need anything else other than itself to draw cards, which is why I had had some trouble deciding on which ones I wanted to do here as far as number 1 goes out of these 2. Annex comes down on 3 and starts drawing you cards immediately. Now, it does deal you damage, right? That's the downside to it. You start losing life right away as soon as you're drawing cards. But the upside to that is if you can muster up a demon later in the game, which this card has a built-in demon for you, which unfortunately does get removed pretty easily off the field and a lot of the times. But if you can continuously muster up demons, you're going to not only gain life, you're going to be draining the opponent the entire time. And for all of my mono black decks that I've ever built, this card has grabbed me the most amount of wins out of any card we have. You play down a Bloodletter of Aclazotz and you win the game a lot of the times, which is really cool. So the Annex is definitely up there, but I'm giving the edge to Caretaker's Talent. And the reason I'm giving it to Caretaker's Talent is because, again, the narrowness of the Annex versus the versatility of the Caretaker's Talent. Caretaker's Talent can be put in a lot of different builds. We've seen it as early as Boros Tokens. That's where it really kind of took off, is Boros Tokens, and everyone was running this with the Urbrask's Forge, right? We generate a token, you get the card draw every single turn, which is really good. And then they'd sweep the board, sun falls, those tokens give you card draw. And that's why I think this card is so good, is that every single token you generate gives you card advantage. So you could be a control player with this card and not play a single creature in your deck. But if you have Fountain Ports as your lands, things that just generate tokens at all, you're going to be drawing cards not only on your turn, but also on your opponent's turn. If you do it right, you get to, draw cards when you play a token on your turn, but then also your land creatures, tap, create a token like a Murex or something on their opponent's turn. You're drawing 2 cards per turn, which is huge. That's double the amount of cards as the Annex, right? And you're not taking any life early on. This card has nothing to do with gaining or losing life. I just think this fits in a lot more builds as opposed to the Annex, which you have to build it around demons. If you don't build it around demons, you've got some backup plans like Shieldred that can kind of negate the damage being drained out of you, but you still want to have demons. Like, that card can really hurt you. And I've had opponents be stuck in positions where they play the Annex and they never get their demons going because I'm just removing them off the field as they hit, and they really drain themselves to death. So I've never been in a situation where a Caretaker's Talents killed me on accident, but it has happened with the Annex, unfortunately. As good and offensive as it can be, I still think Caretaker's Talent here takes the cake out of the two. And the reason why Beanstalk's not on here is because Beanstalk, again, is even, in my opinion, even more narrow, because Beanstalk requires you to pay, play a card with 5 mana value, which, yes, we've got a ton of new help with that, with the Overlords and pending costs. You can cheat in those cards. You've got things like, what is it? This town ain't big enough for the 2 of us, or whatever the card is, where you can cheat it in for 2 and it's actually a 5 or 6 mana spell. You got a lot of versatility with the Beanstalk these days, but it still fits only in a few handful of builds. If you're running Beanstalk, you're typically going to always have Overlords. You're going to always, probably be running Zur or some form of like domain deck. Yeah, it just doesn't fit as well as Caretaker's Talent, which is why I've got this as my number 1. Annex is a very close second, but that brings me to the next one. Now, this one is going to be our final card for our top 5. And it's going to be our versatile category. Now, I chose a versatile category because, as you can see, this card is very versatile. Deep Cavern Bat, I didn't know where exactly I wanted to put it. I know it's a hand hate kind of card, but I didn't want to do a hand hate category. That'd be kind of silly. This card is just extremely versatile. It fits in so many different builds, and I just have it in this top 5 because, honestly, there's never been a game where a Deep Cavern Bat came on the battlefield and I was like, oh, that's fine. Every time the bat hits, I'm left sighing. I'm just left like, really, here we go. It is the worst feeling ever, because typically it's followed by a duress or something like that too, which makes it even worse. But the Deep Cavern Bat is here because, again, its playability and versatility is off the charts. This fits in a lot of different builds. Basically any deck that's running black, or any deck that's running like, dual colored with black in it, like Rakdos, Dimir, Golgari. The Deep Cavern Bat finds its way into all of those decks. Now, the elusiveness of this card is very important too. The fact that it flies is kind of a big deal, because you've got things like Enduring Curiosity and Gix, where a lot of the times with these mid-range decks, you're going to get down the bat to take away their removal threat. And then you're going to get down that creature that's really important that you wanted to protect, that also draws you cards when your creatures are hitting the opponent's face. Now, there's even new things like Kaito out there where you're getting an advantage by hitting the opponent, right? So that elusiveness that it flies makes it even better. It's a big time 2-for-1. You take a card, but it's also dealing damage, gaining you life, and potentially drawing you cards if it's paired with the right decks. Which this one pairs with so many versions of, mono black or some sort of black decks that want to do mid-range stuff. So I have this card in the top 5 for sure, because, again, every time I see it hit the field, I'm just left, just like here we go, man. And then a lot of the times they have two of them, which makes it even worse. Now there's the narrowness of the fact that you almost always have to take the removal spell out of their hand, but most of the time, like I said, that's a good thing because you're going to try to follow this with a creature that typically is going to allow you to draw cards. So I have this one on the top 5. I know it's kind of a silly card, a nuisance of a card, an uncommon that you wouldn't expect probably on this list, but in my personal opinion, I just feel like if you're gonna craft cards and you're new to the game, Deep Cavern Bat is a very, very solid craftable card that, again, you can play in a lot of decks and it gets a lot of mileage for you. It allows you to see your opponent's hand too, which is just brutal. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of, I mean, how many countless 2-mana hand hate cards have we had in the past, especially ones that can grab any card of your choice. And it is a creature, like it's a creature that can attack. And I get the whole idea, like Sheltered by Ghosts, they get the card back if they deal with it. I get that. But hopefully, if you choose the right card, it's going to be safe for a turn or two, especially if you have duress, previously and all this stuff. It's going to get some value out of the game for you. And if it doesn't, the opponent just wasted a removal spell to get back the removal spell, which to them is a lot of value, but you force them to act on the card, which takes the attention off of the next card you play, maybe the Gix or whatever. Anyways, this card is a big deal. I think this card is really good. I think it definitely deserves a spot in our top 5. But I do have one more honorable mention, because we didn't have a single blue card in this list. I felt really bad for blue. So I wanted to throw in a card really quickly just to talk about, and it pairs beautifully with the bat, like I said, Enduring Curiosity. This is just my honorable mention. Out of all the curiosities, in my opinion, this one has the most value to it, the most mileage you can get out of it. It's a card that's been run in a lot of Dimir shells, but again, it's a pretty narrow card as far as what you can put it into as far as builds go. It's typically going to be always ran in some sort of Dimir build that's mid-range, but the card gets so much value for you that every time, again, if I see this card or if I see Dimir in general, I am immediately playing around the Curiosity. If the bat comes down, I see it's Dimir, or if a Fairy Vandal comes down and I see it's Dimir, I start to immediately worry about the Enduring Curiosity. I think this card is really good in the fact that if you kill it, it becomes an enchantment to still generate that card draw value for you. Your opponent or yourself is just so good. I definitely think this could have squeaked into the top 5, but for the categories that I had, it just wasn't enough to cut it. But this card is really sweet, and just wanted to throw it in there as an honorable mention. All right, well, that does it, though, for my top 5 cards in Standard. Again, this was for best of 1. And again, take this all with a big grain of salt. I'm just a guy. I'm a guy who likes to play Magic, probably more than the average person a little bit. I've made over 1,000 videos on YouTube, but that's about as far as my criteria and credentials go. So I wouldn't exactly take this as any form of law or a thing you need to listen to as knowledge you need to retain. You definitely want to make your own opinions and decisions on things you're crafting. And I just wanted to get a video out there for you guys, mostly for our members only. I want to reward the people who help support me and my channel. And if it means getting out of my comfort zone and doing something I'm uncomfortable doing, I will do that. It's just a matter of, having the time to do it. And I'm trying as a New Year's sort of resolution to get more content out to you guys. And this is a fun way for me to do it. Again, I want to step out of my comfort zone, and I want to do things that are different from just standard video. I wanted to try to extend my knowledge, do more research for myself, and expand my knowledge on the game. Try other formats, obviously. Become more of a person you can look to for, Magic knowledge and what's going on in the news and stuff, because I'm always behind on that stuff as well. I'm always the last to find out about anything. I'm a busy guy. I got a family, got the job. I got this. It's a lot, but I am going to be creeping into full-time, quitting my other job within the next couple of months. So I do want to make a bigger push and consistency on my videos, and again, try reaching out to new branches of content that I can give you guys. So this is my first shot at it. I hope you guys can go easy on me, like I said, in the comments. Definitely give me your opinions on what you guys think. What you guys think are some really good cards. You wish would have made the list, but yeah, try not to hate too bad. It's my first go around at this. I may do some, like, you know, top 5 cards when new sets come out now too. Now that I've done this and got this off my plate and off my chest and done this for the first time, I feel like it went pretty well. So maybe we'll look into doing that in the future when new cards start to come out. Also, I want to do other style of Swayze Talks Magic too. We want to do like the top best decks in the meta currently that are winning tournaments. Like we can go on and on about different things we can do for this kind of segment. So hopefully I can keep pumping these style of videos out for you. I want it to be weekly. It might be bi-weekly. I'm not sure yet, but I do hope that you guys enjoyed yourself here today. And again, if you want to see content like this a week earlier, definitely consider becoming a member. But for those who are members, thank you so much for watching and thank you for supporting me. I greatly appreciate you very much. It helps more than you might know. So thank you guys. Thanks for sitting here and listening to me ramble. I hope you enjoyed it. And I might see you guys back here tomorrow, thinking about doing a brawl video. So hopefully we will, and hopefully we'll see you there. Peace out.
Hit him 3 times like a hat trick. The name is Swayze, no Patrick. If you play him, then it's tragic. Hit him with the mythic, yeah, that's magic. MTG, that's what you'll see if you like and subscribe. With the upload, man, man, all of the time. Coming with the best decks, this is the meta. This ain't cheap.